let's talk about your boundaries and how to set healthy boundaries. Because it might be easier said than done to, actually be mindful of them. And of course, communicating them is another whole story. But right now, we're talking about setting them because in order to communicate them, you need to understand what they are. So I want to talk to you about, well, partially my experience, but actually my findings from this book that's called Unbleep Your Boundaries by Faith G. Harper, Dr. Faith G. Harper, who is an amazing, amazing woman, psychologist, therapist. Her books are wonderful, and I've listened to them on Audible because they come with the membership. So I stumbled upon them last summer when I was doing research on boundaries because I was trying to set my boundaries and, understand more about the thinking process that I should have behind setting them. So I found this book and it was revolutionary, and I want to share my findings with you because I want you to also enjoy that structure. But of course, if you want to learn more, I highly recommend this book, and I will leave the link to it in the description. And I also am thinking about doing a boundaries workshop. So let me know if you're interested in doing that, in joining one. In the comments, and also I will create a Google form where you can sign up and where you can express your interest in the workshop and what you would expect from it so that I can have some guidance on what would work and what would actually help people. And I'll add you to my email list so that you can be aware of when that actually happens. So again, that link will be in the description, and let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on the topic. But boundaries, let's jump straight into it because it's such an important topic. And let's talk, I have my notes here because I re-listened to the book recently so that it's fresh in my mind. So let's talk about the different types of boundaries that you can have, the different categories of boundaries. And bear in mind that they will overlap. It's not just, it's either this boundary or it's this boundary. And, they might be different. Maybe you actually have different boundaries. But Dr. Faith G. Harper summarizes them in seven different categories. And the first one is physical. And that's, probably one of the most obvious boundary. Don't punch me in the face. Don't smash me. Don't, don't hurt me physically. And, kind of maintain the distance, I feel like that's a boundary that we all know all too well with the pandemic and, giving each other space even more so than previously. But we also had that before, there was this notion of personal space, and it's this physical boundary that we don't want people to cross. And, when it comes to certain people, like our friends and family, they can come and hug us. A stranger on the street, it would be quite weird and awkward if a stranger on the street just came up to you and hugged you. Yeah, I mean, there are different situations, but regardless, you have your own physical boundaries, and different people may have different types of physical boundaries. I'm sure you've noticed that with the people that you interact with. The second category is property boundary, and that is, for example, this is my hard drive, this is my book, I'm happy to give you my book, but my hard drive is my hard drive because it has a lot of my stuff on. And yeah, anyway, property boundaries. Property boundaries are all about the things you own and what is your comfort level with people touching them, using them, etc., right? Again, different boundaries for different people. Next one is sexual, and that's a very big one as well. And that involves emotional and physical aspects of sexual boundaries. So, what are you comfortable with your partner, or, what kind of relationships you have, etc. The next category of boundaries, category number 4, is emotional/relational. And it's all about your respecting your own personhood and other people's personhoods. It's hard to describe actually, because the thing is, it overlaps with other boundaries. For me, part of it is, respecting people's personal space or personal needs and all that stuff. And it overlaps with other ones as well, but basically respecting that you are your own person and you need your space, you need your bubble if that makes sense. That's how I visualize it. And then other people also have the same thing, and you need to respect that. Category number 5 is intellectual, and it's all about your thoughts, your ideas, your beliefs, and access to information. Being able to access information is also part of it, and these boundaries will be different for different people based on, what they're used to, what are their habits, what have they been exposed to, how they were brought up, a lot of the stuff about their environment. And yeah, again, difficult for a lot of different people, and understanding what it is for you and understanding what it is for other people is super, super important, because boundaries is not just about you, it's also about other people and respecting their boundaries. But let's move on to boundary category number 6, which is spiritual. And yes, there is some overlap with the intellectual because it's all about your beliefs. However, spiritual has a slightly different edge to it, as Dr. Faith G. Harper talks about, explains. It's all about the sense of purposeful belonging. Like, why are you here on this planet? And for different people, it will be different things. Some people feel that purposeful belonging when it comes to, the religions that we are more or less used to. And some people create their own religions. That's actually how I see it. I've created my own religion because that's my spiritual outlook on life. Everybody has one. I feel like it's impossible not to have some type of that, because purposeful belonging can be to a religion, or it can be to your community, or it can be to a purpose, to a cause, to a movement, or maybe, I don't know, everybody has a very distinct way of looking at this and looking of things that fulfill them, and this is part of that. And again, understanding what it is for you and respecting other people's boundaries around that is very important. And finally, category number 7 is time. Time is probably one of the most precious resources that we get in this life, in this world, and we have to spend it wisely. So understanding your boundaries around how you spend your time is essential. And we've spoken about this on this channel a lot, about saying no and, drawing boundaries when it comes to time. Probably that has been the biggest topic when it comes to boundaries, at least what we've discussed. And I feel like that's one of the first things that come to mind, actually, your time boundaries, right? Whether it's, work-life balance, trying to figure out what boundaries you have at work, or, saying yes or no to different requests, because it's all about opportunity cost, and it's all about spending your time wisely and understanding what your priorities are. Because if you say yes to a 2-hour engagement, you can't use those 2 hours for anything else. Like, there's only one of you. I really wish I could clone myself, but there's only one of me and there's only one of you. So gotta spend time wisely. So those are the 7 categories of boundaries. And my question for you, and I want to do this in a workshop as well, in a group environment, right now, pause this video and go back to all of the different 7 categories. Let's have them displayed here. And write down for every single category, write down your boundaries. Just, think of some from the top of your head. If you can't think of any for a category, that's fine. Just move on. Let's get those creative boundary juices flowing, and get something on paper, just so that you understand what those categories mean to you in relation to your life. What is the meaning behind them? So pause this video, do that, and return when you're done. All right, and now we're going to kind of turn things around and look at these categories and see how others may have boundaries in these categories, and think through whether you may have violated someone else's boundaries in those categories. Just think through that, reflect on that for a second, pause this video if you need to. But I think that when it comes to boundaries, it's very important to, think of your own and communicate your own, but also think of other people and their boundaries, and start building more respect, more awareness of their boundaries, and help those other people communicate those boundaries. Let's make that number 4. So yeah, think about whether you violated someone else's boundaries. Ready to move on? Let's go into the structures of boundaries. Yes, this is honestly, the first part was very groundbreaking for me, but this second part was even more so. It goes even deeper. It goes into the structures of the different boundaries that you have. And it divides into 3 types of structure. The first one is rigid. That is when it's a strict boundary and nothing goes through it. For example, I'm going to use the book author's example here. I have a very strict boundary when it comes to punching me in the face. You don't do it. Like, that's it. That's not allowed. Or you don't rob my house or something like that. Like those boundaries, nothing goes through that. The second type of structure of boundaries is permeable. And as the name explains, things go through it. So this is the type of boundary that is set for you by other people because you don't communicate your boundaries or you haven't thought through your boundaries. So they basically walk all over you. Let's just say it as it is. You don't have boundaries really in that area. Like everybody can go through wherever they want to go, they go. So that's permeable. And then finally, we have flexible, which according to the author, and she's done a ton of research on the topic, so I really trust her and it does feel right to me too. According to the author, the flexible type is the golden middle that you want to achieve. And what it means is that based on the situation, your boundaries may change. And of course, for certain things like punching me in the face, that's not going to change. But for certain, for example, with time boundaries, that will change based on the type of request, whether it's aligned with my priorities, etc. So I have flexible boundaries when it comes to certain types of requests. And then I have flexible personal boundaries when it comes to hugging me. We've used this example before. So for example, my husband can absolutely hug me. My parents, my friends can absolutely hug me. Strangers on the street, not so much. Like I will kind of, basically the whole point of flexible is that whenever the incident or the scenario occurs, you decide what your boundary is based on the scenario, based on who is involved, what is involved, etc. So your boundary is flexible based on the circumstances. And the reason why Dr. Faith G. Harper says that it's the best is because, well, permeable, we've seen that people walk all over you. That's not the ideal scenario there, right? The rigid boundary, it just isolates you. Yes, it makes you feel safe, especially if your boundaries have been violated in that area before and you just want to forget about it. Let's say you've had an incident where you've been sexually harassed and you have created a very, very rigid boundary when it comes to, you decide you give up love altogether, right? So it might be making you feel safe, but it's also preventing you from growth opportunities. And Dr. Faith G. Harper says that flexible boundaries, they have that golden middle of helping you feel safe, right, in situations where you should have, strict boundaries, but it also doesn't prevent you from having growth opportunities or just, experiences in life that you would like to have. So flexible boundaries is a very, very interesting topic. And of course, it's also personal. So I would highly recommend sitting down and for the boundaries, you're probably already sitting down, but taking a pen and paper, and for the boundaries that you wrote down in the first part of the video, in the category section, for the ones that you wrote down, think about whether your boundaries currently are rigid, permeable, or flexible, and what you would like them to be. Rigid, permeable, or flexible. And, think through the different scenarios. If, for example, if they're flexible, like, okay, these people can hug me, these people cannot hug me. You know what I mean? For your boundaries, think through those things. Like, what is it right now? What should it be? And then what you can do is figure out what's the gap between them and see how you can better communicate your boundaries in the future. Because seeing that gap, seeing that disconnect, seeing how you're communicating your boundaries right now and how you want to communicate them actually, ta-da! So there was a lot of information that I just shared with you there, and if you would like to read the book, it is awesome, highly recommended. I will leave the link in the description. Again, it's Unbleep Your Boundaries. I'm trying to keep that YouTube monetization. Unbleep Your Boundaries by Dr. Faith G. Harper, who is awesome. She's amazing. But also, let me know if you're interested in doing a workshop all together by filling out a form in the description. And also, if you have any thoughts or comments, please let me know in the comments section. But boundaries are a very interesting topic, and boundaries keep on evolving as we grow older, as we evolve, as we change our life cycles, lifestyles, as we enter different stages in life. They're going to evolve, and this is a very important exercise to really understand where you are and where you want to be, and what types of what categories of boundaries do you need to be more proactive about, or maybe like where are your boundaries being violated and how can you communicate that better. But it's vital to set those boundaries. It's vital to communicate them, because unless you do it for yourself, the world will do it for you, and you probably won't enjoy your life as much as you would had you done the actual thinking, actual reflection, work, and communication. And yes, communication is going to be hard, but I believe in you. You can do this. You can do hard things. You can have those hard conversations, and you can find language that will help you set those boundaries easier. And I will create another video on how I've used canned responses to set my boundaries. Stay tuned and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. And you know what to do. Those bell notifications, make sure that they're turned on so that you're not missing on any new videos, because that video about canned responses is coming, and I'm planning to do a lot of different interviews with awesome stereotype breaking women who are having those discussions, who are having those difficult conversations, who are creating new boundaries and breaking ceilings, etc. So yeah, have those notifications turned on not to miss out on any of that content. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, and share with a friend who you like, because let's be honest, everybody can get better at setting boundaries. You can also find me on other social media. All of the links will be in the description. Have a wonderful time of the day you're currently experiencing. Bye.